Without further ado, let us begin. Our first storyteller is Bree. Bree Bree is an anthropologist and an educator. Her goal is to live creatively with all the beings she loves. She tells stories because that helps her meet this goal. Let's welcome Bree to the stage.
Okay, so people say born this way, right? Lady Gaga, the LGBTQ movement uses this a lot, and it makes sense. It's an important narrative for us because it helps say we're not going to go to gay conversion camp. You can't change it. We don't want to be changed. But for me, that argument didn't work. It didn't resonate. And so when I was thinking about what did resonate, it was my coming into the queer community. When I came out as a 20-year-old, I had spent a long time being very uncertain about my sexuality, looking back, all in retrospect, right? In the moment, I had no idea, but there were little glimpses, little pieces that gave me clues about who I was. I had a diary, and I remember writing an entry about my best friend who I had a kissing dream about, and I was so ashamed of this that I folded the page and turned it and didn't look at it again. So every time this happened, there was a folded page in my diary. So when I came out as a 20-year-old, there was a lot going on. There was some internalized homophobia I was going to have to deal with for the foreseeable future. But I had this idea in my head that I didn't need queer community. I had the blessing of straight friends who supported me and loved me. I had parents who were very confused and uncertain but loved me anyway. I was not rejected by the people I cared about. So I thought, I can just explore this. This is fine. I will go and date women. I can do this. That's okay. I don't need to go and hang out with people based on our sexuality. Why would I do that? What does that bring us together for? What is the commonality between me and all of these different people? So for a while, I stuck with that. I was pretty set. It's like, I'm just gonna date people, and that will be my entree into being gay and then queer and all the other words that we use. But I think it started to change, and it started to change the first time I watched The L Word, which is an HBO show following some very beautiful, some very bougie lesbians in LA, I think. So it's their stories, and it was such a relief as a queer person to see even these women who I was like, I cannot ever imagine being an art museum director like Beth, right? Beth, yeah. I heard some other people know what I'm talking about. But they were talking about queer issues, and there were another part of being a queer person is getting into the critique of the L word later after you've done the whole, which L word character are you? Eventually you're like, it's classist, it's transphobic, and yeah, so it's part of coming into queerness, right? But this was the first time I got to see myself as a queer person on being represented. So that was my first entree into queer community. My second was actually being around queer people. I got a queer best friend in 2013, and she brought me to my first lesbian bar, which was in KC, South Carolina. Yeah, I know, so exciting. The L word. which is no more. I'm sad for all of you that you did not get to experience the L word. When you were driving across the train tracks in Casey, you would drive past what looked like a warehouse, and you would stop because your GPS told you the L word was somewhere close by, and you would eventually recognize all of the trucks were absolutely carrying a bunch of lesbians to an unmarked bar in Casey, South Carolina. And you would go in, and there were 2 pool tables and lesbians jockeying around them, a couple of gay men hanging out with their straight girlfriends and their gay girlfriends. There were some drag king shows, my first drag king shows, which was mainly a bunch of like very adorable butch lesbians dressing up as like pop stars, so they all look like Justin Bieber, and they're all singing Justin Bieber and Justin Timberlake. So very solid choices. And there was my friend who only drank wine, so she would always bring wine for the bartender to pour for her the whole night, because there was no drafts. There was just some bottles. It was a pretty janky place in some ways, but it was so special for me to be surrounded by older members of the community and young members of the community. We were all just kind of there together. And I did a project where I talked to the bartender and a couple of the people she knew who knew where all of the old gay bars had been in Columbia. So I walked around and took pictures of these places that are no longer there, but they did have queer people, and there's a queer history in Columbia that I got to discover. And my last thing that I did, so I got to see queer people, I got to be around queer people, and I finally embraced being a queer person when I shaved my hair. So I did the queer haircut. I went for it, bit by bit, but eventually I had this wonderful shaved cut and just curls flopping around on top. And the whole point was for me to signal to other people that I was there and to try it out, to see what it was like to be visibly queer in a place, because most of the time I'm walking around, people have no idea, except if they're queer, and then we give each other the nod, I see ya. But other people have no idea. And the haircut helped me, connect with some people and just get to play around with being queer, seeing other people with the haircut and giving them the nod, because we both did it. We just went for it. So I guess the main point of my story is that while some people say born this way, and that works for them, I say I was nurtured into the queer community. I had to be surrounded by people who showed me that it wasn't just okay to be gay, but that it was beautiful and joyful, and that it was worth things like the suffering and the tragedy and the pain. That's why we're choosing to be the way we are. That's the choice in whatever our hormones or our brains are telling us to do. So, thank you. Yeah.